So I'm going to welcome folks. I'm Chris Cooney with the Metro South Chamber of Commerce, and it's been a few weeks since we've been on doing these COVID recovery calls. We actually went live to in-person programming June 1st, beginning in June, and have been live pretty much outdoors with the exception of our annual meeting, which was held in early November, where we had 300 people in person. And that was the low point of infections before the holidays and after, and still within that 6 months of people having their second vaccination. So we actually had a wonderful in-person event. We had no incidents. And then, as many of you know, the numbers just in the last week or so have crept up dramatically. And as a result, we've been seeing what's happening at testing sites, especially at our community colleges, where numbers are well over 500, 600 people a day being tested for COVID. So using good judgment, I think we decided to go online. So thank you for being with us and pivoting with us as we continue, hopefully just for a short time, moving back to online programming. This gives us a chance to incorporate a few more components, meaning we've got Margaret LaForest with us from the Mass Office of Business Development. And as those who have been with us throughout the 2 years, we've been on pretty consistently on Fridays afternoons, giving updates from the Small Business Administration, from the Massasoit Office of Business Development, from the health community, and also from the mayor of Brockton's office. So it's been a pretty good run of information sharing. In fact, last Friday, I know many of you joined us. We were on for a full hour and a half with just the SBA focused in, and the Massasoit Office of Business Development or Small Business Development Centers, but just focusing on EIDL, because EIDL, for those of you who aren't aware, is closing out December 31st. So this is your really last week to get applications in. I was on a call with Bob Nelson yesterday from the SBA, and he reminds folks, get your applications in, get your placeholder in. You can get it in before the end of the month. They'll continue to review them going into next year as time and money allows. So the EIDL, as many of you know, they've now approved up to $2 million per person, and it's the interest rate is 3.75 fixed for 20 years. So it's really extraordinary product and value for folks who might be renting and want to convert to owning their business. Anyway, we have a link that I think just got put in the chat of that entire recording, and it's really rich with information. If you have not accessed EIDL, or you only accessed the advance early on, this is the last really pool of money that's available currently. I do expect that there'll be some startup money as we round the corner and start to pivot to replacing the 20% of the businesses that have gone out of business, or 20% of businesses that went out of business. As we get into 2022 and 2023, I think the focus is going to change to helping with technical assistance people get into business for the very first time. So anyway, I want to touch on that. Please check out the link and share it as much as you'd like. So as I said, I'm Chris Cooney, president of the Metro South Chamber of Commerce. I see Margaret has joined us. Sue will be joining us shortly. We want to do a quick update on what's happening on the COVID recovery efforts and what's happening around the restart with our resource partners. So I'm going to just start in with Margaret LaForest. Margaret, good to see you. Welcome back. Wish it was under better circumstances and in person, but thank you for joining us. What's new with the governor other than him not running for re-election?
I know. And of course, being a state employee, I don't get to have those political conversations with you here, but no, we are quite busy. As you know, there's been a lot of ARPA funding that the state legislature has to approve. And those programs, as the funding is approved, will be laid out. And of course, I'll be communicating to you as it comes in hot off the press. These calls have been tremendous. You've been really one of our most consistent partners. Today, I just want to talk about one resource that is actually applicable for you at the Metro South Chamber. I know you're anxiously awaiting our Regional Economic Development Organization grant awards. Stay tuned on that. We don't have that yet, but the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism is one of the partner agencies within the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, and they have just released the RFP for the FY22 Travel and Tourism Recovery Grant. This can be put together in a couple of ways. Your nonprofit partners, your 501c3s, 501c6s, such as the Chamber, are eligible. And if you partner, you can increase the amount of your award. So this could potentially be something, for example, the Fuller Craft Museum or the Brockton Rocks could benefit from, marketing their organizations. However, if they partner with, say, Metro South Chamber as a lead applicant, or with the municipality as the lead applicant, or all of you together, you'd be able to leverage up to about $150,000 to get some travel and tourism recovery. So as you know, there's a variety of COVID recovery resources, affecting every sector. So this is kind of the latest, what I have to talk about. There's a webinar on it next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. I will put the link for this information in the chat, and happy to answer any questions for anyone who would be interested in it. Of course, I need to attend the webinar and learn about it a bit more myself. But other than that, that's kind of the latest resource update that I have for you today. And I do welcome myself and Sue, anyone to contact me offline so we can review various resources that are applicable for you. There's a lot of focus around workforce development. I know the Mass Higher Career Center, and particularly the Brockton location, is getting a lot of funding for workforce development programs. And that's a hot topic, right? Hiring needs, skilled labor, getting people onboarded. So we're hearing that. That's a real trending topic, and there's a lot of resources around that. We talk about that a lot, I feel like, but it's about getting connected. So now would be a great time, and I welcome the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret. And we know a little bit about that because we actually, as a chamber, received that grant last spring, and we're able to update our website. We were awarded almost $20,000 from the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism as a nonprofit. And we were able to hire a local entity to really clean up and advance our website in a meaningful way, and also have a year's full of support and SEO support, which is getting our website to the top of all search engines, which is really important in this day and age. Our annual meeting speaker was from Google Global, was talking about how important it is to really take a look at your website as an entity and make sure that it's really being seen, because technology's changed and search algorithms have changed and all of that. So encouraging folks to spread that information around. If you serve on a nonprofit board, or you are a small business, an attraction or hotel or a restaurant, you have the ability to update your website up to $50,000 if you apply a loan. If you want to market collaboratively as like a cooperative of restaurants or attractions in a region, you can receive up to $150,000. So that's great information. Thanks for sharing that, Margaret. We are expecting the mayor and Sue Joss to do a health update and a city update. They both did let us know they were going to be jumping on a little later. So I think I'm going to pivot here. I do want to mention that Cambridge Savings Bank is our sponsor, and would have been, if we had been in person, we would have been able to say hi to John, and you all could have met him. John is a local resident, but works for Cambridge Savings Bank. Cambridge has expanded into this region and has done quite a bit of business in this region. And John is very engaged in the South Shore and Metro South region. So we're looking forward.
Sitting here in my Quincy office right now. So
Quincy office, you're right. Yeah, on the South Shore. That's right. That's where Margaret is too. You guys are probably not far from each other.
Right.
So John, can you post your information down below, and that way people can reach out to you for any commercial or other lending needs? We really appreciate that.
Sure.
And I'm going to jump over and introduce Masa early so she can introduce our would-be host, Ray DiPasquale from Massasoit Community College. He's our new president. So Masa, what we're going to do is going to switch to Ray, and then once Ray's interview is over, we'll switch back and I'll pull in the mayor and Sue, and then we'll go to Ted after. It's COVID times. You have to be flexible, folks. Thanks for bearing with us. Masa?
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chris. So today's Good Day Metro South features Massasoit Community College's new CEO, who we're so happy to have here with us today, and unfortunately not in their beautiful new student center. So Ray DiPasquale is here, and as you all know, Massasoit Community College is a very dynamic, diverse learning community that supports all students in their education, leading to a career, to a transfer to a four-year institution, and the pursuit of lifelong learning. Faculty and staff are committed to student success, and I've seen that myself personally, and strive to offer accessible and innovative programs with comprehensive support services to prepare students for membership in a global society. So representing the school today, we're going to be talking to Ray, who began his presidency at Massasoit Community College in August of 2021. Prior to that appointment, he served as president of Clinton Community College in New York, and he was a consultant for the Rhode Island Board of Education and served as president of the Community College of Rhode Island from July 2006 until January of 2016. He also held the distinguished position of Commissioner of Higher Education for the Rhode Island Board of Governors for Higher Education, and as Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs at the SUNY College of Brockport. And he's held a number of leadership positions at Springfield Technical Community College, which my office used to be near before. So Ray will have to talk about Springfield at some point. He began his career in higher education at Middlesex Community College. Mr. DiPasquale holds a master's degree from Northeastern University and a bachelor's from Arkansas Tech University, and he received an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters bestowed by the New England Institute of Technology. So please, let's give a warm welcome virtually to Massasoit Community College, Ray DiPasquale. So Ray, first, of course, welcome to Brockton. Welcome to the chamber. We're proud to have you be a part of our group. And I know we only have a few minutes to talk, but I wanted to hear from you about a couple of the big projects and works at Massasoit.
Sure, Masa, thank you so very much for that wonderful introduction. And sometimes you forget about all the things you've done in life, but it was a nice down a little memory lane for a second. A real shout out to Chris Cooney, though, since I came to Brockton and in this area. Chris has done nothing but give me the best welcome I could have possibly asked for. Introducing me to people and bringing me, quickly into the Metro South Chamber. So very grateful, Chris, for all you're doing and the wonderful work the Chamber is doing. It's a pleasure to be here. It's actually very exciting to be here. Brockton is our home base, but as we know, we're in many locations. But when you talk about big projects, there's one in particular, and I know we don't have a lot of time, so I just want to mention the one, and that is the Board of Trustees just recently voted for us to go forward with a $40 million transformation of this campus. We'll be renovating our science and liberal arts building, which really means to all of the South area that we represent, tremendous opportunity for change. It will change the face of the college. Literally, the programs that will benefit will be everything from liberal arts, science, mathematics, respiratory care, engineering, nursing, chemistry, biology. It truly will change how we train and give workers in the area a chance for upgrading and provide to the South Shore an outstanding resource for future employees. A tremendous project that is ahead. We will present it to the state on December 23rd. If all goes well, which we're very hopeful that it will. Hopefully the state will be applying for $30 million from the state. We'll be borrowing a little bit of money because we have no debt at the institution, and we'll be raising about $2 to $3 million to come up with a $40 million to go forward. So we're very excited about this project. It's going to have a huge impact on on the South Shore and all that we do, and change literally the face of education here on our Brockton campus.
That sounds incredibly innovative and needed at a time like this when the job market is flush with positions, and we need our young people to be educated and trained in fields that are desperately needed, especially in the Bay State area. So thank you, that sounds amazing. Now, so this introduction, to your bio talks about all of your past accomplishments. But what more about you could you tell us as we get to know you better?
Well, I guess probably the most important thing too is that I had a life in politics for a little while. I served on the school committee in Springfield, Massachusetts, and I was a city councilor in Springfield as well. I had the unique opportunity to run for mayor, which I did, and I'm the only person in the long history of Springfield, Massachusetts that won the primary and actually lost the election. So I've had lots of wins and losses, but I have had a great introduction to politics. Had a wonderful, most of my career has been in Massachusetts, so this was a real homecoming and a very exciting time to be back in Massachusetts. I'm very sorry to see that our governor's not running. I think he's done a tremendous job for our state and particularly the community colleges. So it's exciting to be back and bring the experience and move our college forward and be part of this community.
Well, so you must know, and for those of you out there that know about Dr. Seuss growing up on Mulberry Street in Springfield, that's where my office was, Ray. So we'll have a lot to talk about.
Well,
so last question is about, I want to talk about highlighting the region that you serve here in the community college. Now, Massasoit has 3 campuses, Brockton, Canton, and Middleborough, but there's also going to be one soon in downtown Brockton. Can you tell us about all of this?
absolutely. The Brockton campus is our main campus. And, interesting enough, besides the wonderful academic programs we have, just as an interesting point of pride, athletics is a big part of this college's history. I bet this is a tidbit that most people don't know, and a point of pride for our college, that over 20 of our baseball players have actually signed professional contracts. The college provides a wonderful opportunity, and it kind of ties in with our theme today. That's why we were so excited about hosting this, and like many others, really sorry we couldn't do it in person. But for us, baseball helps a lot of our young people, find their way through college and on to great careers as well. But, Brockton has a tremendous campus. It is a wonderful place to be, over 100 acres of great facilities, and particularly as we move forward with these renovations, I think it's going to be a state-of-the-art campus, one of the finest community college campuses in all of New England, and I don't say that lightly. As we move up to Middleborough, we're in an old elementary school, but I have spent a lot of time in Middleborough lately with the superintendent and the town manager talking about a reopening of that campus. We currently have our paramedic program there and our EMT program. As we all know, Middleborough is growing a little bit. I went into their new high school the other day. Oh my goodness, what a tremendous, beautiful facility. Populations are growing in Middleborough, and we're very excited about expanding our offerings in Middleborough. We go over to Canton, and Canton is a premier campus sitting in a wonderful location, beautiful facility. Programs like veterinarian technology. Very few people have it. It is a state-of-the-art facility, second to none. Our diesel program is the only one offered in New England. And again, state-of-the-art facilities, medical assisting programs. So we want to expand our offerings in Canton as well. And, and then finally, the downtown location, which is in the unemployment building. As the unemployment office moves to that location, very exciting opportunity. I toured it just a couple of weeks ago. We're going to have 3,500 square feet on the first floor. And what I really want to tell, members of the chamber today and those that are online is that we really want to open that facility up to the community. We want to be able to have, businesses use it for meetings. We want to be able to sponsor lectures and have the chamber participate with us and partner with us as we do offerings down there, along with really doing a survey of all of you and saying, what do we really need to offer for workshops, workforce development, potential academic programs for the future. So we're very excited about that. We're understanding that could be open as early as February and early March, and can really change as we begin to talk about, the wonderful things that the mayor has in mind for downtown, Brockton. We're going to be a part of that. So it's an exciting time for education. I'm on the edge of my seat every day. People like Chris keep me going, and we've got a lot of great stuff going on. So it is truly a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity today to talk a little bit about our college and where we're going and the students that we serve. So we're very excited to be part of this community, and most importantly, provide a great education for the young people who go through our our college.
Well, Ray, your energy definitely comes through even virtually. So I can't wait to meet you in person, to come and see the campuses. So thank you for your time. And we look forward to hearing more about the great work you'll be doing.
Thank you.
Chris, did you want to turn it over to the mayor and to suggest?
Yes, let me just introduce the mayor quickly. Before I do, though, I equally am impressed by Ray, and our meetings have been very positive. As you can see, he's been here a very short time and already set the goal, you know, $40 million building on the campus, something that we've been talking about for a decade. And that's just extraordinary. So I think we as a community need to rally behind him and make sure that he's successful in raising the awareness and the funds to make Massasoit a cog in the wheel of healthcare, which is our #1 business and industry in this region. So thank you, Ray, for being here and your energy and your leadership. So speaking of leadership, we have the Mayor of Brockton here with us as well, Bob Sullivan, who we have seen quite a bit on tours, and we'll be seeing again today for ribbon cutting at 3. You know, Mayor, you and I have been excited about the construction downtown of a lot of buildings, but one of them is the what we call the Massasoit building, because the sign on it is large and it says Massasoit. As soon as you come to the end, we know there'll be state offices upstairs, but it's a great message to send, right? Education, downtown, campus, all of that. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening and how you're doing and whatever you want to talk
Yeah, well,
about?
first of all, Ray is just a wonderful asset to the school, but also to the community as a whole. You know, when he first came on, I had a meeting with him, and Rep. Michelle Dubois was there, and he's just a likable person. His passion is evident. And so good things are going to happen, not just in the City of Champions, but for Massasoit. What's good for the school is good for the city and vice versa. So I love the building downtown. It's a game changer, as you know, Chris. And, you know, there's a lot of development going on right now, but with our partners over at Massasoit, they didn't need to be there. They chose to be there, and it means a lot. So we'll continue to work in collaboration. We're always better together. And with that being said, I need to unfortunately talk about COVID, because it's definitely rearing its ugly head. It's staggering, quite honestly. We're up to 456 deaths in the city of Brockton. It's an uptick of 4 since last week. Current active cases, 743. We had gotten that down to 0 just a few months ago. So we surpassed 18,000 total cases today, 18,027. The scary thing is this: 87 inpatients at the 2 hospitals, Good Samaritan Medical Center and Brockton Signature. 12 of those folks are in the ICU. So I know the state discontinued the classifications, you know, red, yellow, green, gray. But if we were doing that, we'd be a deep red right now. 5.83% positive test rate, 49.6 confirmed cases per 100,000 population. So what that means is, and I said this last week, and I want to thank Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito. The 3 of us met a week ago today at the Shaw Center. The 3 of us got our booster shots right there, rolled up the sleeves, get the shot. And what I said then, I'm going to say again. We're in the holiday season. So the greatest gift that you can give yourself personally and your loved ones is to get vaccinated and get the booster shot. It saves lives, your loved ones' lives. Right now, we are really being pressed to the max capacity and census at the hospital. And I know Sue is going to be able to share what they're doing. And let me give a plug. Brockton Neighborhood Health Center does an unbelievable job every single day. But with COVID, the staff and really the personnel have stepped up big time. So kudos to Sue and her leadership team over there. But, you know, really, we need to continue to be diligent and vigilant. The spread of this is real. People are dying. People are vaccinated and still getting sick. I coach basketball, right? I'm not a great coach, but I coach 4th grade Brockton Community Schools. A couple of my players tonight can't come to practice or the game tomorrow because they have COVID. So what that means is practice what the clinicians tell us what to do. And, you know, as mayor, I'm going to continue to work with Sue and with the CEOs of the hospitals, including the VA and you, Chris, and Margaret and Susan and everybody, because we're all in this together. One death is too many, but now we're talking 456 here in Brockton. So I am very interested to hear Mr. Reinstein. Ted, baseball and Brockton go synonymous, hand in hand. Stalin Dean was here in the City of Champions. Franklin Sporting Goods here in the City of Champions. And the catcher's mitt was created here in the City of Champions as well. So again, Chris, I want to thank you and Metro South and all of your team, because we need to continue to be advocates for our community, business community, healthcare community, everybody. So thank you for having me again.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to quickly pivot to Sue for an update on the health center. Sue is the CEO of Brockton Neighborhood Health Center and has been a key leader and partner in sharing information with the community. So do you have the dashboard handy?
I do. I do. And thanks, Chris, and thanks, Mayor, for the kind words and for the really amazing collaboration we've had through all of this. But what I'm about to share is Dr. Rick Herman's daily slides, and he's been amazing at providing these whenever I ask him for it on a day's notice. So he is, I think as most of you know, the physician consultant to the mayor on COVID. So as I was thinking through these slides that I saw, it almost doesn't matter what slide I show you because the graphs all look the same, and that's not a good thing, which you'll see in just a minute. Over the past month, I went to 2 retirement parties that had 200 plus people in them. And then when this chamber event came up as in person, just in that week or two's time, things had changed so dramatically that it was obvious that in person wasn't going to work anymore. So we had that little dip of seeming to come back to normal. And now this again. So this is the CDC's tracking of high-risk communities. So in order to be considered high risk, we have to be at a score of 100. Brockton is at 468. So you can see we're well in the red zone from the CDC's perspective. Again, active daily cases. This is hospitalized cases, as the mayor just mentioned. Those numbers are really concerning. And what the 5% level is, which is what we were at last time I spoke to you a month or so ago, and had been that way for a while. At 5%, that means 5% of the patients in the hospital have COVID. That's pretty manageable for the hospitals, and they don't have to do anything with looking at stopping services or curtailing everything. 15% is kind of the red line, where if they go over that, they really have to start thinking about curtailing elective procedures that are going to result in overnight stays. And that's what the phase we're in now. I don't want to speak for the 2 hospitals, but I do know that both of them have stopped allowing visitors due to the new surge. This is monthly deaths. I know that we are no longer at 0 in December, just as of, I believe, yesterday, but you'll see that we had the big spike in deaths at the beginning, but it hasn't gone away. Percent positive rate, Brockton's at 5.83%. Right now, anything over 4% puts us in the red zone, according to the way the state does the red, yellow, green measurement. This is the daily dashboard for today. You'll see 93 new cases reported today. The 81 that you saw in the other graph of hospitalized patients, and even more concerned, 15 of those are in the ICU. And this is the 5-day trend line of active cases. So you see, even at the worst of the pandemic a year or so ago, it didn't go up that straight up. It's almost vertical at this point. Surrounding communities, last time I showed you this chart, it was mostly green with 1 or 2 yellow, now all red. This is a concern. This is the breakthrough cases. A breakthrough case is someone who gets COVID when they're fully vaccinated. And this keeps creeping up. It's at 1.6% of vaccinated people now have had COVID, and most of that has been very, very recent with the Delta variant. And some good news. This is fully vaccinated, and by age group, over 50, that group is doing really, really well. One of the best in the state. Just getting started on the kids, and some work to do in the younger age groups, but overall, as a city, the city has collaborated to really do an awesome job. So that's Dr. Herman's slides. What I have to report from the health centers, we're really struggling to maintain primary care services at the same time that we're rapidly ramping up our COVID services again. So I just was back and forth over the past couple hours with staff, getting people scheduled to work COVID cases over the weekend so that we have those services available. We had scaled back on all of that. We are still doing asymptomatic testing at the Shaw Center and the trailer outside through the end of the year, and walk-ins are welcome there. And at the same time, Brewster Ambulance is doing the vaccination clinic inside, all ages, all ages that are eligible, doing lots of kids right now, the 5 to 11-year-olds, and lots of boosters. One new thing is that on the booster, you have the ability to choose your brand. You don't have to stay with the same brand anymore, and some people are choosing to do that as well. So, we're just trying to rally the troops back up as fast as we can. Our staff are tired. All the healthcare providers' staff are tired, but we just have to go back at this one more time.
Thank you, Sue, for that update. I saw yesterday, I think, that they're contemplating 16 and 17-year-olds being allowed to get the booster. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. And
So that-
I was a little out of the loop yesterday, so I'm not sure it passed, as I was up in Maine, but it either passed or is about to.
Okay, so that's a new update for folks, is that 16 and 17-year-olds will be allowed to get the booster. They were not allowed, and most of them now are out of the 6-month vaccination window. So they should be getting one if they're allowed, and now they'll be allowed, it sounds like. So vaccinations at the Shaw Center and testing at Massasoit Conference Center. Massasoit campus drive-through. And then we also, Sue, you mentioned vaccinations also at the health center.
So we're vaccinating our own patients at the health center now. We decided to roll back and work on just our patients right now when we found out that our own patients actually have the lowest vaccination rates in the city. So we're focused on that. But we do have asymptomatic testing in the trailer outside of the Shaw Center. And really just to stress, with symptoms, that is not the site to go to. We want to try to keep that as safe as we can.
Okay, so head over to Massasoit. It's in the parking lot for folks that haven't been over there. And there's 4 lines. And I was over there the other day. There were 700 people tested on Tuesday, 600 on Monday, 700 on Tuesday. And I think they closed Wednesday. Thursday they reopened, and it was over 600 again. So it is amazing to see that many people over there all at once. Anyway, so go online and schedule a time slot, and then you can get your testing done. I'll just mention one more thing before I turn it back over to Masa. That is, the U.S. Chamber just came out with new statistics. Massachusetts has the highest, as of today, level of jobs that are available. So we're the highest job employee shortage of any state right now as of today. We have more jobs than people. I think it's 2.6 jobs per person seeking jobs. So it's pretty dramatic. So there's an article that I believe Emma posted for you. Check that out. It's enlightening. It gives you statistics on a lot of different job fronts, and then some resources to help with that issue. So my pleasure to go back to pivot back to Masa. Masa is an immigration attorney, noted internationally, and has been recognized recently as a super lawyer on immigration. Also leads the chamber, but on our board, but also leads an attorney association focusing on immigration. So she is our MC today, and she will introduce our guest speaker. Masa.
Thank you, Chris. It's good to be back to talk with you all. And Ray, that article is a great plug for what Massasoit can do to help, train our younger generation for all these jobs that we have out there. I'd like to take this moment to make an important thank you to John Bobbin of Cambridge Savings Bank. They're our sponsor for today's event. Cambridge Savings Bank is a full-service banking institution, over $4 billion in assets. And as a mutual bank, they're committed to improving the quality of life of employees, customers, and our communities. It's one of the oldest and largest community banks in Massachusetts. Cambridge Savings Bank offers a full line of individual and business banking services and has branches from Arlington and Bedford and Belmont to Burlington, Cambridge, Charlestown, Concord, Newton, and Watertown. So thank you for being here, John. Sorry that we couldn't be here in person to thank you, but for those of you that want to reach out to John, please Emma will put his contact information, or he might put his contact information in the chat box and reach out to him. So thank you again for sponsoring.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do now is introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Ted Reinstein, who is best known in New England as a journalist and reporter for Chronicle. It's Boston's celebrated and America's longest running locally produced TV news magazine. Now, while he appears occasionally in the studio, at the anchor desk, or delivering an opinion commentary, we're all familiar with seeing him out in the field. Ted has gone to every corner of New England. He's found the offbeat, unique, moving, and all around memorable stories, telling these colorful stories of the regions and the places around us. So Ted has been a regular contributor for WCVB's political roundtable show, On the Record, and he's been a member of the station's editorial board since 2010. Beginning in 2002, he was part of a Chronicle team which received a National DuPont Columbia Broadcast Journalism Award for their coverage on the Big Dig and how such massive public works projects compare around the world. And Ted, if the Build Back Better passes and moves forward, maybe you'll have some more reporting to do on that, hopefully with better outcomes. So in 2018, he received an Emmy Award for his story on Good Night Lights, a phenomenon in Providence, Rhode Island. And elsewhere on television, Ted has hosted the premiere season of the Discovery Channel's Popular Mechanics show, brought viewers up close to some of America's most iconic landmarks, including HGTV's network special Lighthouses, which is a favorite of mine, especially around here in Massachusetts. We have lots of beautiful ones. For the Travel Channel's photo adventure series, Freeze Frame, he explored Hawaii's volcanoes, the caves of Puerto Rico, and the South Pacific islands of Tahiti. Ted, I'm becoming envious and wanting to take your job. His first book was a New England notebook, One Reporter, 6 States, Uncommon Stories, from the Globe Pico Press in 2013. And he was selected as a National Geographic Traveler. It was selected as a best pick. He's the author of Wicked Pissed, New England's Most Famous Feuds, and co-author with his wife, Anne Marie Dorning, of New England's General Stores, Exploring an American Classic. Ted's most recent book is Before Brooklyn, The Unsung Heroes Who Helped to Break Baseball's Color Barrier. So please, everyone, virtually welcome Mr. Ted Reinstein.
Thank you very much, Masa. Thank you very much for that great introduction. And thank you all for having me here today. It's a real pleasure. Chris and I were talking before we started today, and I think this is my 3rd or 4th visit with the South Shore Chamber. And every time it's been a pleasure. I only wish, like we all do, that this could be in person today. But I'm going to quickly get my my presentation up here so that I can share it with you. Let's see here. There we are. Where's a teenager when you need them? So this book actually is an exploration of some really extraordinary Americans, most of whom are unknown to the rest of America. They have contributed and then they have retreated into obscurity through no choice of their own. And they're really folks who paved the way for one of the great and really the very first civil rights victory of the 20th century, which was the breaking of baseball's color barrier. And, you know, speaking of baseball, I mean, Ray mentioned, so already something I didn't realize and didn't know until now, which I will be exploring more. And maybe I'll get in touch with Ray so I can find out more about the fact that Massasoit Community College has this great history with baseball. Didn't know that. And so I want to find out more about that. But, you know, a word that both Ray and Mayor Sullivan and Sue all used in just the past 20 minutes is a word that you will see I'll be using throughout this talk, and that word is collaboration. And I know that that's a word that comes up in all of your lives, in everything that you do. It hopefully comes up in all of our lives in one way or another. I think it's a word that we could use a little more of throughout life in America these days. And as you'll see, it has everything to do with this story. So let me jump in introduce you to some of these people in about 25 minutes or so. So I always start with throwing out this question to folks, which I'll answer for you since we're not in person. But, you know, I always love to ask people, after Jackie Robinson, who was the second player? Who was the second African-American Major League ball player? And I love to see people scratching their heads and wondering, they throw out all kinds of, but the second black player in Major League Baseball after Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in 1947 was Jackie Robinson, because the first African-American Major League ball player is entirely unknown to most Americans, a fellow named Moses Fleetwood Walker. And he broke the color barrier in 1887 and became the first black Major League ball player. But he's entirely unknown today, entirely unknown. And the truth is that when baseball first began to mushroom in popularity, which was literally in the decade following the Civil War, it's the time that the term national pastime is coined, because nothing like that had ever existed. You know, Brockton, City of Champions, right? Boxing, basketball, baseball, football, you name it. None of those sports existed as major league sports when baseball had that all to itself in the decade right after the Civil War, because it was really seen as something of a bomb. It was seen as something of a national salve to bring a country back together through this sport that shared all over the country now in the 1870s, after the country had literally torn itself apart. And the thing that made baseball stand apart is that, unlike any other part of American society at that time, the period of Reconstruction, it was integrated. Baseball was an outlier in that sense, which makes the color barrier only that much more heartbreaking when it finally comes to be, because in its early days, baseball is integrated. Players like Bud Fowler, players like Frank Grant, first African-American professional baseball player from Massachusetts, from Western Mass, Pittsfield, and most famous of all, the Walker brothers. Moses Fleetwood Walker and his younger brother, Weldy, they were teammates together in 1881, 1882 and 3 at Oberlin College in Oberlin, Ohio. Moses Fleetwood Walker, the first actual bona fide black star baseball player. He transformed an entire position of the sport. At that point, catcher was where you stuck your absolutely least talented player, and they were given the task, one job, just stop the baseball. That's when the term backstop comes to be, because that was literally their only job. Just keep the damn ball from rolling off the field and delaying the game. And Moses Fleetwood Walker made it into a skilled position. First catcher to wear shin guards, first catcher to wear a chest protector, first catcher to wear a face guard, first catcher to call pitchers, and first catcher to throw a ball player out attempting to steal a base. It was always legal. There had just never been a catcher who was talented enough and a good enough arm to do it, which has always made me wonder how surprised that first player must have been who got thrown out. So Moses Fleetwood Walker, good enough in 1884 to be signed by the Toledo Blue Stockings Major League team at that time, and he becomes the first black Major League ball player, which was seen by much of the country as a really hopeful sign. This was, mind you, in 1884, literally 20 years after emancipation. So this was seen as a real step forward. Unfortunately, not by everyone. And unfortunately, it was seen as not a step forward by one of the most influential players in the game, Cap Anson. Cap Anson was the star player for the Chicago Cubs, the marquee Major League Baseball team of the time. And Cap Anson, although he was unquestionably the first true superstar ball player, he was a slugger. This is the dead ball era. The ball does not go very far. If you hit 29 home runs like he did many times in the dead ball era, that's like hitting 79 home runs today. Unfortunately, in addition to his hitting prowess, he was also an unrepentant racist. He was a bully. He was a loudmouth, and he refused to play against any team that fielded a black ball player. And he held true to his awful promise. Major League Baseball had to figure out how to deal with this situation, and they did in the worst way possible. They gave in to his demands, and in the summer of 1887, in Buffalo, New York, they voted in a gentleman's agreement, which I know that Mayor Sullivan knows better than anybody. You can't do that today. There are transparency laws today that would make this impossible. But these were the Major League Baseball owners' more than a century ago, and there was no record taken, there were no notes, there was no vote taken, nobody came out afterward and explained this position to the press, but black ball players henceforward were barred from Major League Baseball. So what happens? Well, you know, by the time you get to a decade or so later, this is the period of Jim Crow. This is the period where the Plessy versus Ferguson decision is taken by the Supreme Court. About 20 years ago, there was and Massa may know this, about 20 years ago, there was a poll taken among American jurists, which found Plessy versus Ferguson voted unanimously as the single worst Supreme Court decision in American history. It literally legalized state-sanctioned segregation. And now segregation is everywhere, whether it's sports, whether it's the arts, whether it's housing, education, jobs, or as you can see from this picture, even a simple waiting room, right? So what happens? So black ball players have to deal with the fact that they are now barred from playing at the most elite level of the sport, the major leagues. But along comes Rube Foster. Rube Foster is regarded as the father of black baseball. He is the father of the Negro Leagues. And he decided that even though whites could bar black ball players from playing major leagues, nothing kept blacks from what? Collaborating to come together and form their own professional league at the highest level. And they did. And in 1920, at a YMCA in Kansas City, Missouri, the Negro Leagues were formed. And that was, at this point, the greatest collaboration among black ball players, among managers, administrators, bankers, you name it, right? It took incredible collaboration all within the black community. This is a period of time when there are succeeding black banks, and those are the only lines of credit, right? For budding major league, I should say Negro League teams. And the Negro Leagues are the most important unsung hero in this story by far, because they created a showcase. Without this showcase, without a stage, a national stage for black ball players like John Pops Lloyd, Judy Johnson, Oscar Charleston, one of the greatest shortstops ever to play the game, Cool Papa Bell, there never could have been a breaking of the color barrier, because it wasn't blacks, mind you, that had to be reminded that these players were good enough to play at the major league level. It was whites that had to be reminded, that had to be pointed out, that had to see somebody like Cool Papa Bell and how fast they were, to see later pitchers like Satchel Paige, a catcher like Josh Gibson, to see how great these players were. That's what the Negro League allowed. It allowed this stage. So this is great. And for the first decade of the Negro Leagues, the 20s through the 30s, there is a mushrooming of the Negro Leagues. They start out with 12 teams. In a decade, there are 13, 20, 21 teams. It divides into a Negro National League and a Negro American League. There's a Negro World Series. And it looks like there will only be growth for years to come, except the 20s gives way to the 30s. And the 30s are all about the Great Depression, right? And I think sometimes we forget, truthfully, just what a cataclysm the Great Depression really was. Maybe many of you have had relatives, family members. I know my dad was 10, 12 years old in the worst years of the Depression, the first years of the 30s, 30, 31, 32, 33. And I remember growing up hearing about how unimaginably bad it was. And it was, as you can see from these stats, a quarter of all Americans were unemployed. But as bad as that was, it was even worse in minority communities. Because in minority communities, it was a case, unfortunately, of last hired, first fired. Because there was this awful synchronicity going on, right? So the period of the teens and 20s into the 30s were also the period of the greatest migration of African Americans from the American South to cities of the North in history, right? They were leaving the South, the mills in the South, and they were finding greater jobs, higher paying jobs, better working conditions, better quality of life for themselves and their family, better paying jobs in northern cities from Denver through Chicago to the Northeast. And this is great. The problem was they were vulnerable in terms of being the last and most recently hired. And in cities like Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, minority unemployment was over 70%. And at the worst years of the Depression, 31, 32, 33, there were more than 30,000 businesses, right? Imagine being a member of a chamber at that time, and you talk about bad news, more than 30,000 businesses folding annually, including the Negro Leagues. So the Negro Leagues by 1930 are done. The major leagues are not. The major leagues are cushioned by wealthy owners and they hang on, but the Negro Leagues are done. So what happens? Without the Negro Leagues, again, Brooklyn simply doesn't happen in 1947. It may have happened later. It would not have happened 10 years later without the Negro Leagues. But Pittsburgh becomes an unsung hero as a city because Pittsburgh is home to two men who collectively, again, collaborate and rebirth the Negro Leagues. They rebirth Cumberland Posey Jr. and Gus Greenlee. Both of them buy a Negro League team. Cumberland Posey becomes owner and manager and head coach of the Homestead Grays. He had been a standout basketball player in Pittsburgh. Basketball at that time was a relatively new sport. And he was a standout baseball player. And I'll tell you what, I'll throw out to you one of the greatest answers to a trivia question ever. And if this question ever comes up or you pose it to someone, make sure you quickly make some money on the line because I guarantee no one knows this answer. And that is, who is the only person who is a member of both the basketball and baseball halls of fame? Cumberland Posey Jr. So he buys the Homestead Grays, and the Homestead Grays in short order become one of the greatest baseball teams in history. Mind you, in 1931, they won 143 games. How incredible is that? In 1931, the major leagues only played 154 games. This team won 143 games. Now, not to be outdone, Gus Greenlee buys a team too, and they become the Pittsburgh Crawfords. Now, what's amazing about the collaboration between these two men in refounding the Negro Leagues is that they hated each other. They became mortal enemies in terms of their businesses, right? In terms of being dueling ball club owners the rest of their lives. And mind you, these two teams, the Homestead Grays and the Pittsburgh Crawfords, you have to realize these were not just the two greatest Negro League teams of all time. The Grays and the Crawfords are considered 5 or 6 of the greatest baseball teams to have ever played baseball. You know, the joke in Pittsburgh in the 1930s, mind you, Pittsburgh was home to a major league team, right? The Pirates. In the 1930s, now the Pirates were awful in the 1930s. So the joke in Pittsburgh among blacks and whites in the 1930s was Pittsburgh is home to 2 great baseball teams. The Pirates aren't one of them, right? So why are they so great? Well, you're looking at the 2 reasons why they were so great, because Satchel Paige is one of the greatest, I would say one of the 3 greatest pitchers to have ever lived. Josh Gibson, one of the greatest sluggers to have ever played baseball. They played for both teams. They went back and forth simply because those 2 owners were constantly poaching each other's best players. They went back and forth, but these 2 players are the greatest unsung heroes in the history of the Negro Leagues because of the effect that they had on white sports writers. White sports writers, for instance, would watch Satchel Paige at Yankee Stadium playing against the Yankees with a Negro League team, striking out Joe DiMaggio 3 times. The only time in his life DiMaggio ever struck out 3 times. Look it up. So when they would see that, that began to affect the way that they looked at the Negro Leagues. It affected the way they wrote about it, and it had an effect on whites. And that was what was crucial. Josh Gibson, one of the greatest sluggers to have ever lived. He was universally known at the time as the Black Babe Ruth, but funny story. Shortly before he died, he met the real life Babe Ruth. And Babe Ruth threw his big meaty arm around him as he was wont to do. And he said, "Mr. Gibson, great to meet you finally. Hey, I understand they call you the Black Babe Ruth." And Josh Gibson said to Babe Ruth, "All due respect, sir, my people call you the white Josh Gibson." So all a question of perspective, right? So how do we know so much about the Negro Leagues? Because we do. The only reason we know a lot about the Negro Leagues, mind you, in the entire history of the Negro Leagues, not a single white mainstream newspaper had ever assigned a beat writer to the Negro Leagues, to cover the Negro Leagues, even in its entirety, not one. So how do we know? The black press. The black press, you talk about collaboration, the black press is one of the greatest unsung heroes in the entire story because it is through the black press. And I take some pride as a journalist in the history of the black press because They worked in conditions that we can't imagine today. Everything that they put together, from printing presses to the buildings to put the presses in, to the hiring of reporters, to sending those reporters out to do stories in tough conditions, in racist conditions, all of a challenge every single day. And yet people like Robert Lee Vann, who founded the most successful Black newspaper in history, the Pittsburgh Courier, greatest distribution of a Black paper in history. Robert Sengstad Abbott, only almost the second most successful Black newspaper in history, the Chicago Defender. They hired great writers like Wendell Smith. Wendell Smith, if you ever saw the movie 42, right, about Jackie Robinson, became a close personal friend to Jackie Robinson and covered his life. Sam Lacey. Sam Lacey starts out with the Courier in Chicago. He writes for the Courier and the Chicago Defender. These two Black journalists collaborated in ways that are still in some ways echoing today, because they reminded their readers that not only were they great ball players like Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson and Oscar Charleston and Cool Papa Bell, but these players, they would say to readers all over the cities that had major league teams, maybe they weren't doing well, right? Like the Red Sox. And they would say, you know, geez, think what Cool Papa Bell could do hitting behind Johnny Pesky. Think about what Josh Gibson could do hitting cleanup with Ted Williams right before him, right? So it got people thinking, why can't we get guys like that? Oh, right, the color barrier, right? So it was an incredible effect that they were having. But you know, they wouldn't have been able to have that effect if they weren't able to get those newspapers all over the country. And the way they got those newspapers all over the country is actually the greatest collaboration of them all, because it involved the most unlikely ally in the entire story. The Pullman Porters. The Pullman Porters were the face of overnight train travel, you know, in the golden age of train travel. And they had a surreptitious means of delivering Black newspapers all over the country. I write about it in more detail in the book. I won't get into it here, but let's just say it involves baskets of bread and bundles of newspapers. And they got those papers out all over the country, so that by 1940, just 5 minutes and 5 years from the end of my talk here, people like Lester Rodney, writing in New York City, was able to frame the argument, right, of going off and fighting in World War II, beating Jim Crow, but let's come back, beating Adolf Hitler, but let's come back and beat Jim Crow, right? And that's what units like the Tuskegee Airmen, that's what it was all about, the double victory campaign. Beat Hitler, beat Jim Crow, right? This was now the calling card, right? The cry of people like the Tuskegee Airmen and people like the 761st Tank Battalion. So as we get to the end of the story here, perfect unsung hero, because the 761st Armored Battalion is largely unknown to anybody today. The Tuskegee Airmen are the most celebrated all-Black unit in history, but the 761st was an incredible story. The first all-Black armored unit. They fought with Patton's Third Army. They set records for consecutive days at the front. One of the first units to cross over into Germany, one of the first units to liberate a death camp. And if you look at that little inset picture under the tank turret there, you will see one of their lieutenants, a guy named Jack Roosevelt Robinson. Jackie Robinson was the lieutenant officer of the 761st, and he would have led them to Europe. Unfortunately, he had not been cleared to go with them, because just before they were set to disembark, Jackie Robinson had an old football injury. He was an All-American halfback at UCLA. They discovered an old injury. He wasn't able to go with them, but he did lead them in spirit. In 1945, he found himself honorably discharged with this injury from the Army, out of a job, needing a new uniform, as it turns out. And he found that in Kansas City when he was offered a job with the Kansas City Monarchs. So as we go to the very last battle of breaking the color barrier here, I wonder how many people would know. This is, again, one of those times I wish we were in person, because I'd love to ask people to, by a show of hands. I wonder how many people would know that as Jackie Robinson opened the season in 1945, April 1945, with the Kansas City Monarchs of the Negro Leagues, I wonder how many people would know that at this point, he was only about 3 weeks from coming to Fenway Park. That's right. So Jackie Robinson, when he starts the season with the Monarchs in April 1945, has a rendezvous with destiny at none other than Fenway Park. Because in Boston, at the same time that Jackie Robinson is setting to start his season with the Monarchs in the Negro Leagues, Izzy Muchnick in Boston. The second Jewish city councilor in the council's history. He would become the first Jewish chairman of the Boston School Committee. He has been looking high and low for a way to force Boston's two Major League Baseball teams to at least consider how they could offer a job to a black ball player, or maybe a tryout. He lived by something called tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is a central tenet of Judaism, and it translates from the Hebrew. It means literally repair the world. And that's what Izzy Muchnick was trying to do. He was trying to find some small way to repair the world, which for him meant helping to somehow break baseball's color barrier. And then he found it. He found it in the old blue laws. Remember them, of Boston? There was a blue law that stipulated that you cannot play a Major League Baseball game on Sunday in Boston without the unanimous vote of the Boston City Council, and that vote had to be given annually. So he wasted no time in writing a letter to the brain trust of the Boston Red Sox. There you see Eddie Collins and Joe Cronin and Tom Yawkey. And he asked them to please take concrete steps to at least offer a tryout to some black ball players, qualified black ball players. And the Red Sox basically charmed him and said, oh, Mr. Muchnick, very nice of you to be in touch. We'll see what we can do about that. But meanwhile, here are some tickets to the next homestand. Well, Izzy Muchnick was a bulldog. He was a terrific lawyer. He had played goal for Harvard, at that time without a mask. So this is not a guy who is afraid of a challenge. And he waited and he waited. And then he wrote another letter to the Red Sox Brain Trust. And he says, it appears you are not prepared to take any concrete steps. And therefore, I will be withholding my vote to allow you to play baseball on Sunday. Well, this got the Red Sox attention because at that time, this is pre-television, right? It's all about ticket revenue for Major League teams in the mid-1940s. And not only that, on Sundays, the Major League teams played a doubleheader. So 2 games. Every Sunday, the Red Sox would be denied, and they were forced to offer a tryout, which they did. And on April 16th, 1945, the greatest collaboration of all comes at the end. Because on April 16th, 1945, our friend Izzy Muchnick has collaborated with Wendell Smith, the great sports writer from the Pittsburgh Courier, who he has asked for help in locating 3 qualified black ball players. And Wendell Smith locates Marvin Miller and Sam Jethro, who later played for the Boston Braves, and a kid named Jackie Robinson out of Kansas City, playing for the Monarchs. And they troop to Fenway Park on April 16th, 1945. They take the field for about 45 minutes. They run the bases. They take some infield. They take some batting practice. They're called back in. They are told, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch. And none of them ever hear from the Red Sox ever again. But you know who was paying rapt attention that day? A guy named Branch Rickey. Branch Rickey in New York at that point had already been planning to break the color barrier with Jackie Robinson for about 1.5 years. So he was not keen on seeing Tom Yawkey that day offer anything to Jackie Robinson, because he was going to do that himself. Of course, now in hindsight, we know that Branch Rickey had nothing to worry about because it was going to take Tom Yawkey another decade and 2 years before he would break the color barrier. But Branch Rickey did it that very same year. And 6 months later, in October 1945, Branch Rickey signed Jackie Robinson to a minor league contract with the Montreal Royals, the Dodgers AAA team. And of course, collaboration complete. On April 15th, 1947, Jackie Robinson took the field with the Brooklyn Dodgers at Ebbets Field and broke the color barrier. So it is all about these unsung heroes, these people who collaborated, these people who were not afraid of a challenge, these people who used what they had to work with and never lost sight of keeping their eyes on the prize and working with whoever was willing to work with them. And I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty good message for today too. So with that, I am going to stop yapping. And again, I want to thank you all very much for not only being here with me. I want to thank Chris and the Chamber of having me here once again. I will say just in closing, and then I'll just leave this up. If we were in person, I would have a table of my books. So I'll tell you what, if anybody would like to purchase any of my books, including Before Brooklyn, bingo. All you got to do is shoot me an email at ted@tedreinstein.com, and I will be happy to handle the rest and get you a signed book. With that, if we have time and anybody has a question, I'm happy to answer any questions. Most importantly, I just want to say thank you all once again, and be safe. Be safe. The mayors and Sue are absolutely right. Be safe.
Thank you so much, Ted. That was fascinating. I'm really excited to get your book. I actually already posted it on one of my Facebook pages where we talk a lot about issues related to race. And I know that my friends will be, fascinated to be able to read this book. I actually have a question about the research that you had to undertake to do this, because as you mentioned, like, how do we know about all of this, especially so long ago? And the newspaper, that you talked about, could you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, sure. So, right. So there have been a great number of books. I read 19, but there have been a great number of books written about the Negro Leagues, and all of those writers as well have had to depend on research material that's been compiled over the decades, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and on into today. And part of the challenge is that Major League ball teams, right, like the Red Sox, all of them, they always had their records scrupulously kept. They had, press there. Major League Baseball had their own units that compiled records and archived them. That was never true of the Negro Leagues, right? Negro League teams were just as much, if not more, concerned with making sure that they could afford to have enough bats and balls and equipment for their team and a field to play on than they were people who were archiving and keeping track of the records. So in some ways, it's a wonder that we have managed to have the records we have. And you talk about unsung heroes. It's some of these archivists over the decades who have gone back and combed through many black papers, white papers who wrote about them, other correspondents and authors and other people. That's another book in the making, is the archivists who really made the Negro Leagues real for people today. So there was that, but also the two greatest, for me, the four greatest and most important resources for me were the Baseball Hall of Fame, which, although Major League Baseball at one time barred black ball players, there's a complete sea change at the Hall of Fame today. And they have an entire wing and an entire archive unit that is solely focused on the history of the Negro Leagues. And they were a great help, as was the Negro League Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri. But I was also wonderfully, I felt so blessed to develop a friendship with the two adult daughters of Satchel Paige and also the grandson of Josh Gibson, who were incredibly helpful to me in coming up with some of this information. So there you have it.
Thank you. A lawyer's dream of hearing about all of the research and the archivists out there.
Yeah. And having some clerks, in a sense, to do it for you. That's right, Masa? That's
definitely. Chris, do you know, are there any other questions? I noticed that there was one thank you out there for you, Ted, about what an amazing historical presentation and thanking the chamber.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anything on your end, Chris?
No, I don't. I think we can wrap it up. Thank you, Ted.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ted. That was incredible. I look forward to being able to spread the news about your book. Some just housekeeping items. The next Good Day Metro South event is scheduled for Friday, January 28th at the Martin Institute at Stonehill College. Fingers crossed that things will proceed well with COVID and we can meet in person. January's Good Day Metro South will be a lunch edition at 11:45 a.m. and will feature Massachusetts Life Sciences Center's new CEO, Kenneth Turner. And also just save the date for March 2022 Multicultural and Business Forum. Maybe we can get some of Ted's books and have them there for people to be able to see. And April 2022 is a Taste of Metro South. So we also do some door prizes, and we randomly select a company to be highlighted in an upcoming action report. And this month, let's see if we have that winner yet. I don't see it in my little chat box here, but we'll have two of those, and Emma Stratton will reach out to you once your names are pulled. I do also want to say that we're going to be conducting a giveaway featuring Ted's book, Before Brooklyn, for 5 individuals on this call today. The winners will be chosen randomly after the conclusion of today's program, and maybe the same with the other parts too.
Yes.
Okay, great. So just a last thank you for today's ambassador team, for the Chamber Board, the Enterprise News, our sponsor, Cambridge Savings Bank, and our representative here, John Bobbin, and our host, Massasoit Community College and new president, Ray DiPasquale. And finally, thank you so much to our speaker, Mr. Ted Reinstein, for being here today, for your energy, for your passion, and for all of the work that you've done in bringing these stories to all of us. So thank you all for coming. It was a pleasure to host this program. Have a nice weekend, everyone.